The Dragon X9 by Sanlida. In this video, I'm going to unbox and assemble the Dragon X9 by Sanlida. And if you want to see a review, a full review on it, as far as different speed ratings at different draw lengths, I'll do that in a separate video. So this one's going to focus on assembling the bow for those who are interested in getting it, but aren't exactly sure how to put everything together. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm just going to use a little razor blade to cut the tape along the box here. And this will enable me to open the flap. And what we have here on top is the soft material bow case. I'll also mention too, as I get the components out, I'm going to do another video comparing the Dragon X9 with the Dragon X8 so people can see the difference. So I can tell just by looking at it, some of the differences already that I see is the arrow rest. It's very similar, but you could tell it's just a slight upgrade from the one that comes with the Dragon X8. Now also there is a sight light here, and if you tighten it you'll realize, hey, the light doesn't come on. The reason for that is there's a plastic piece in here that you have to actually take this all the way out, take the clear plastic piece out that prevents the batteries from coming in contact with the connector there. Once the plastic piece is out, you can tighten it back in and the light will come on. This is an arrow puller, so when your arrow is in the target, let me pull out an arrow here and show you. So when your arrow is in the target, you put that around the arrow and grab it and pull it out. Some targets it's really hard to pull your arrows out with. So now this quiver, I see that the top part of the quiver is pretty high up as far as the grabber for the arrows. I'll actually slide this down to about here, and that'll work better for the way that I put my arrows in and out. And now this is adjustable here. You can loosen these screws and slide. Actually, they're not even tightened yet. So because of the length of my arrows, I typically slide mine all the way down to the bottom there, and then I will get the correct Allen wrench to tighten this up. And so my quiver is going to end up being like this on the bow. Your attachment bracket's here, but I can see right now the screws are not there, so they're probably over here in the container that has the Allen wrenches. This here is a little rubberized stabilizer, and that will screw into the front of the bow. So here is the bow, and they took my advice and put a tag on here. It basically says never dry fire the bow. Some people who are brand new to archery, they get all excited, they take a bow out, pull it back and let go, and that dry fires the bow. The cable or the string can come off the cams and things like that. The riser's a little bit different than the Dragon X8. The bolt for your arrow rest is in the riser, and here are the screws for your sight. So your sight, we're going to take these screws out, attach the sight. Now there are three options for the sight. You like how I have my head kind of cut off in the view here? So there's three options. You can move the sight closer to you, and by mounting it on these with these screw holes here, or farther away from you by mounting it on those there or in the middle. What would be the reason for that? It's because the orange ring around the sight housing, you want to look at that through the hole in the peep sight here in the string. So when you have it the closest setting, this ring is going to appear bigger in the peep sight. So if it's not fitting correctly, you can move it farther away, and that will make the ring around here seem smaller and more likely to fit in the peep sight. Now there are markings on the sight so you can see how high you're adjusting it. The reason that's helpful is when you're sighting in the bow, you're going to move it in small increments in the direction that your arrows are missing the bullseye. So if you're aiming for the middle of the target and your arrows are hitting high, you're going to move the whole sight housing up until you get the first pin sighted in, and then you'll then move the pins individually from that point on. In order to fit all of the pins in the sight housing, especially if you have a lower draw weight, you'll want to individually move that top pin up higher in the housing, because there's going to be what's called pin gap. There'll be space between the pins. the slower the bow is with the lower draw weight, the farther those pins are going to be apart. So if you want to be able to use the very bottom pin, you're going to need the top pin to be up higher so there's more space for that pin gap all the way down through the sight housing. Once you get your top pin set to where you want it, you move the whole housing until that arrow will hit. Let's say you set the first pin for 20 yards, move it up to about here, and then let's say your arrow hits still higher than where you're aiming, you'll move the whole sight bracket up. Once that 20-yard pin is set, you can go back to 30, 40, 50, 60 and move these individually. And there is a little level in the sight here. So the bow also comes with a bunch of arrows. There is the number 300 on here, so I'm assuming that means there are 300 spine arrow. And that's good because the higher draw weight, you need a stiffer spine. So this also comes with a release. All right, let's start with putting on the arrow rest. So I'm going to locate in the Allen wrench bag, probably going to be my largest Allen wrench key. So we'll just kind of turn the bow over here. We're going to back this all the way out. There is a little washer right here. So here is the washer. We want to make sure that's in place. Okay, now we're going to put this here. As far as the placement, I just want to, I'll get this kind of close and then I want to point something out here. Okay, so now you want to be careful of how this is lined up. You can see I could have it too far on an angle down, too far of an angle up. You want to try to get it essentially straight with where the arrow is going to be shot from. You also want to give yourself a little bit of room. So right here, the arrow rest, you may need to move it up or down or left or right. And you just want a little bit of space between the arrow rest and the riser so that it doesn't get hung up as you're trying to make any of those adjustments. So right there, it's pretty close to where I want it to be. I'm going to tighten this down. Okay, so the arrow rest is on here like that. There is a D-loop already tied on. What you'll probably want to do, let me just take this tag off. So the arrow, you're going to have your odd color fletch, in this case it's green, facing up. So you want it to be as perpendicular to the string as possible. And in the tuning process, we'll figure out if we need to move this up or down or left or right. I just looked at the arrow, looked down the arrow, and I can tell that the left to right margin on the rest needs to be adjusted. So it actually needs to go in closer to the riser. So some things you can do to see, where this rest needs to be set from left to right is you can actually put the arrow on and look from the middle of the top limb bolt here down to line it up with the middle of the bottom limb bolt here. And when you do that, I can see that the arrow is sticking too far off to that side. So what I'm going to need to do is move the arrow rest in toward the riser. I want to try to get that roughly lined up so the arrow is coming straight off the bow. If it's coming like this off the bow, we're going to not have good arrow flight. We want it coming straight off. So to do that, we're going to find the Allen wrench to fit this screw here and move it in. Okay, so I've just loosened that up with that Allen wrench. Found the one that fit it, loosened it a couple turns. Now if you look at the arrow, I can slide this in and then I can kind of look at it, kind of line up those limb bolts. I pushed it too far. So you can kind of use this approach to eyeball and get it close. And then when you get your shooting in, you can also do what's called walk back tuning. I have videos on that. It'll be a little bit lengthy for me to explain here, but that's one way to tune that in. But you want to at least eyeball and get it close. Out of the box, the arrow is pointed too far out that way, so I did have to move it back in. and just eyeballing it. So on the arrow rest, there's little hash marks here to help you see how far you've moved it. Let me just come up closer so you can see. So right on here, there's little slash marks. And just eyeballing it, there's two of these little marks between the arrow rest part itself and the riser of the bow, or to the bracket here. There's two of these little markings. So I would imagine for you, as you're setting one of these up, again, that's just eyeballing it, getting it roughly close. You're going to be about two of those marks from the bracket. Now, if I look at it from the side to try to see if the arrow is perpendicular to the string, it's somewhat close. If it was clearly off, then I would have to adjust and move the arrow rest up. If you needed to move the arrow rest up, the screw is inside this piece all the way down in there. You'd have to loosen it, push the arrow rest up or down, and then tighten it back up. So it's down through that cylinder looking piece, shaped kind of like a stop sign. I also mentioned the peep sight is made so you can actually move that in the string if you needed to. And in fact, you will most likely need to move that. Don't expect that to be perfect. So when you get the release, now I have a target set up right there. I'm going to point this at the target to draw back just so I can show you this. So the way the release goes on, okay, so there's the release. You can adjust the length of the head from your finger. Now I'm going to put my finger behind the trigger so that it doesn't go off. And I just want to show you what just happened. The arrow popped off the D-loop because the fletching reaches the arrow rest with the arrows that they sent out with the first batch of Dragon X9s to the United States. So I actually paused the video and I sent a bunch of emails to them saying, this design is not going to work the way you have sent the arrows. It's not the bow, it's the arrow. See, watch. So there's two problems with the arrow in the first batch that they sent over. The first problem is, look at how far the fletching is from the end of the arrow. It's too far forward. It's putting the fletch into the arrow rest, and it's because of how tight the fit is here, it kind of gets stuck. The second problem is the knocks that they used. In my opinion, these are more intended for target archery than hunting. So I'm just going to see how that doesn't have the strength to grab the string and pull the arrow out of there. Plus, a lot of hunters want to use light up knocks. These knocks here, there's a metal piece and a tongue that sticks out under that metal piece or aluminum, and this black knock slides onto. So I recommended to them, let me get a different arrow to show you. So here's an example of a hunting arrow that I use. It's got more of a standard knock. It's not real low profile. And the reason for this low profile is if you're doing target archery or shooting in a competition, let's say a 3D competition, multiple people are shooting at the same target. If another arrow hits this, it could break that knock off, but there's an aluminum piece underneath. You could just slide another one on. The arrow doesn't go down, the other arrow doesn't go down into your arrow and split the arrow. So the arrow is still usable in that situation. With this, if an arrow was to hit into the back of this, it could go down into the shaft and explode the arrow, ruining the arrow. So for target archery, yes, there's an advantage to that. But for hunting, you could swap out this for a light up knock and see your knock in flight. So if you compare my hunting arrow to the one that they sent out in this first batch, you could see where the fletching is in relation to the end of the arrow. And if you compare it to theirs, this is just too far. I also recommended maybe shortening the fletch a little bit to also ensure that it's not going to go into the arrow rest. So I'm mentioning this to you. If you were to get this bow and you have the initial arrows that they sent, you may have an issue. So see now with my hunting arrow on there, the fletching is not in the arrow rest. Again, I have a target right there. I'm not going to actually shoot the arrow, but I just want to show you drawing it. My finger's behind the trigger. See how, no problem, it didn't come off like that. So it's not an issue with the bow, but just the design of the fletch of the arrows. So now I'm going to ease down here, take the release off. In order to, like if you were to get the bow with these arrows, it's a matter of shaving off the fletching and gluing on new ones. I do have a video I recently put together on how to fletch an arrow. You can check that out on my YouTube channel. But the bottom line is that arrow as it was sent is not going to be usable in the bow. And I have alerted them to that. All future Dragon X9s kits that are sent to the United States will have this corrected. If you happen to get one that has the uncorrected fletch, you'll have to contact the company about getting that corrected. All right, now I'm going to put the sight on. So I've located the Allen wrench that fits these screws here. You can actually remove them by hand. Now if you have blue Loctite on hand, I would recommend putting a dab of blue Loctite on the threads. So I'm going to use the back slots and get it farther away from me to try first. Now when you're putting the sight on, I like to kind of get it close but not snug on the first one. So I barely got that close. I didn't snug it down. This one here, close. Now I'm going to go back and forth and kind of snug them in. I'm actually going to turn this Allen wrench, get a little more leverage. I don't want to strip it, but I do want it snug. So now that's snug in. And now we're going to install the quiver, and I'm going to need the screws. They're over here. They're taped into place, so I'm going to get the screws out of there. I'm going to disengage the quiver. So you're going to pop it like that to get it off. Now to install the quiver, you're going to want the vertical slot facing up, okay? Because it's going to come in and swing into the bottom. If you install it upside down, it's going to fall off too easily. So this, you want it facing upward. There's two lengths of screws. We're going to use the longer screw. Now I just checked the owner's manual, and they don't tell you which screws to use. There's a set of longer ones and a set of shorter ones. I recommend using the longer ones because they'll get a little more grip into here. Now also in the owner's manual, they tell you to have the vertical facing piece down and the sideways facing piece, you know, obviously to the back. Do not follow that. When I was younger, my very first quiver that had an attachment similar to this, when I was shooting it, I had it upside down, well, the way they're suggesting, and the quiver would sometimes just fall right out. So when you have it dropping in from the top and sliding in, it's not going to fall down to the ground. It's going to stay in place. So by the time you're watching this video, they may have even changed the owner's manual to reflect what I am saying. So do not follow what they suggest in the owner's manual. So what you're going to do is the top of the bow, it's going to slide down, and then you swing the bottom part of the quiver into place, and that way your quiver's not going to fall down. If you do it the way they're suggesting, the bottom, you're going to slide it up from the bottom and click it in, and if that top piece slides out, your whole quiver is going to fall right out. If you're hunting, that's a problem. So face that up and then slide the quiver in like that. Okay, then as far as putting arrows in the quiver, It's just a matter of putting it up in the lid part there and then clipping it down into these rubber pieces here like that. So then the quiver is going to go into the mounting bracket here. Actually, I just remembered I need to tighten these up. So let me find the right Allen wrench for that, which is this one. Now the reason why I like to put my quiver as far up as I can is I don't like my arrows hanging too far down below the bottom cam. Because like when you're hunting and walking through the woods, if your arrows are hanging way down here, they get caught on things. So the closer up to the bow you have them, I feel like when you're in a hunting situation, the better off you're going to be. It doesn't get as hung up on things. So I'm just tightening these. Then you can take your arrows and put them in your quiver like this. Alright, so your quiver's on, your sight's on, your rest is on. Now I'll just take that little plastic piece out of here. Kind of have to bang it out. Sometimes you need to get something in there and pry it out. It's a clear piece down in the cap there. Okay, here is the little clear disc that I took out of the cap of the sight light. Now I'll put the cap back on, screw it down, and as you can probably see, sight light comes on. So there it is, it's set up and ready to go. I realized after I thought I was finished, a matter of screwing on the stabilizer. Actually, let me get the wrist sling. Okay, in with the wrist sling was the biggest Allen wrench for tightening the limb bolts. And this is the wrist sling here. So what you're going to want to do is get the wrist sling, and if you want the words to be facing up, you got to look at which way they're going. So the buckle will face to the side where the quiver is in this scenario. And then you're going to take your stabilizer, put it through that little hole there that has a grommet, and screw it down in. Now I'm hand tightening that on. There is a thing to use a little wrench on it. Typically don't need to. And then the wrist sling, you'll come above the dampener here, the bar for this string dampener. You'll come around, feed this in through the back part, and then out the front for this little clip there. And then your hand will go under the sling when you're shooting. You reach in under the sling, you knock your arrow on, you're going to draw back. Again, I don't want to draw the bow without an arrow on there. But that's basically how you set it up. Now you'll also notice a boa holder in the case. So what this does is it clips onto the bottom limb like this. And then your bow, you can stand up. You'll have to take the quiver off in order to stand your bow up when it's not in use. Here, let me move the box here a second. So I have a table right here. You just stand the bow up like that. And if for storage, you could leave like that. Or when you're shooting the bow, you can stand up and go retrieve your arrows and come back and then get the bow. And it just comes right back off like that. And again, if you want to shoot with the quiver on, you'll need to take the quiver off to use the stand because of the arrows come so far down. So that is a little look at putting together the Dragon X9. The bolt for the limb bolts, or the Allen wrench, like I said, was in with the sling there. And this is going to go in there to tighten. Now, I would like you to stay tuned to my videos that I make, because in a future video, I'm going to compare the Dragon X9 with the Dragon X8 so you can see what is the difference and which one should I get. So I will address that in a separate video. Again, I'll also be doing a full review on this. We'll test the speeds at different draw lengths, things like that. and make sure you stay tuned for that. And I'll also do a tuning video on how to tune this, tune it for broadhead flight and arrow flight. So stay tuned to future videos. We got a lot more coming up with the Dragon X9. Thanks for tuning into this video. Until next time, take care and God bless you.